Okay, so as my good friend Crystal said, I am Adam Rippon, and I am not the figure skater. I hope no one was here to watch me do a triple Lutz because I can't do that. I can barely rollerblade, but I can make video games, and I've been doing it for a real long time. I started out doing Game Boy games in the early 2000s, mostly Game Boy Color. My first video game ever was Little Nicky for the Game Boy Color, based on the Adam Sandler movie of the same name. And then I suppose it's worth noting that the producer on that went on to make the movie Grandma's Boy, which is named after me, which is a long story, but it's a great movie and the most accurate depiction of the video game industry I've ever seen. So what we're going to talk about today is making video games in Unreal Engine 4. The tagline for this was Mario in a month or Fortnite in a fortnight. And so lesson one, let's talk about marketing versus reality. In video games, it's very common that we will say something does one thing and then it does not do that at all. So we are not going to be making Mario in a month. We're certainly not going to be making Fortnite in 14 days. But what I am going to try to do with all of you is make Star Fox in 60 minutes. And I think we can pull that off. Not a good version of Star Fox. It'll be more like a Space Badger, but I think we can do it. I'll be using Unreal Engine 4.26, which is in preview still, but I figured as long as these sorts of videos end up being outdated immediately, so might as well go with the bleeding edge, right? So let's go ahead and get started. I will launch Unreal, which you can get at, what is it? What's the website for it? Unreal, I don't know, Google for it, you'll find it. Unreal Engine 4. So we're going to boot that up. And we're going to create a project, games project. And I'm going to just create one from a blank canvas, nothing in it. I will include starter content. There's a bunch of different settings when you create a project in Unreal. You can choose to do a blueprint-based thing, which is the language that we'll be using today, or a C++, more traditional game programming language. But Blueprints is way easier and it's way more interesting and it makes a way better video. We'll be doing things maximum quality rather than trying to scale down for mobile, but I've never actually noticed what the difference is. We're not going to touch ray tracing. That's advanced stuff. And we're just going to choose to have some starter content in there. So let's call it Space Badger, and we'll create it. And you can see we already have the name there and everything. It's so fancy. And it always starts my VR stuff. Now, right off the bat, because we chose to have starter content, it puts a couple of chairs in there. And we don't need any of that. So I'm going to go and just create a new level with default. And the default level has almost nothing in it. It's got this sky sphere, which you can look at. There's a sun over there. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can change the angle of the sun and all of that. It's kind of fun by default to just mess with that. But that's not what we're here for. So we've created a map, and first thing I'm going to do is just save it. I'm going to make a folder. What did I call it? Space Badger? Space Badger. And I'm going to make another folder called Maps. And I'm just going to say level 1. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys how to make a game with Unreal without any other tools. There's 3D rendering software like Maya or 3ds or Blender or Softimage if you want to go back to the early 2000s. But we can do really basic 3D modeling actually right inside of Unreal. And you're not going to win any prizes for it. It's not even going to look good. It's going to be really low poly, but that's why we're going to try to do just a basic Star Fox kind of thing. So Unreal consists of a bunch of different panels. There's this big one here, that's the viewport. There's another one over here that's, I don't know if it's called the palette, but I'm going to call it the palette because it's just full of stuff that we can drag into the world. Like if I wanted to stick a light in the world, I could do that. I don't want to. Then at the bottom, there's the content browser. And you can toggle on or off the folder thing. I did that. That's the first thing I do every time. And then over here, there's the world outliner, which is all of the things that are in the world. Right now we've got atmospheric fog, this floor, a single light source, player start, the sky sphere, which was that again, a skylight and some other junk. None of it matters really. And then there's a details panel, which is all the information about the thing that you have selected in the outliner. Like we could take the floor here and just change it to like a sphere, you know, and we'll get into that more in a second. Also, all of these things are like dockable and you can move them and you can really screw up your whole workspace. So if your things aren't in that order or in that space, that's probably why. Okay, so from here, let's start by making a spaceship. In this palette over here, we've got all the different kinds of things that you can place into the world, or at least most of them. And there's one called geometry. And we can take a box, and we can drag it into the world. We could also, from a different panel, drag a different kind of box into the world. You see, one of them has the default grid material on it, and the other one's just white. That's because this one over here on the right is a pre-made cube mesh, and it has a pre-made material on it. Whereas this other one, which looks all kind of flickery and weird, is what's called a BSP mesh. Why it's called BSP, it's binary space partitioning in case you're interested, but what it really means is it's an editable mesh. We can take the corners and move them and delete them and mess with it. And we can use that for modeling, which is so it's the quickest way to make some custom content for your game, other than, of course, going to the asset store and just buying a guy or, you know, a spaceship or whatever. So let's do that. Now, first thing you have to do is, right now, all we can do is move it. But if we go up to modes, we can select brush editing. And now that we're in brush editing mode, we can select the various vertices, edges. It's a little hard to select edges, but you can. There we go. You got to be real precise. Or faces. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to make, what do they call it? An R-wing from Star Fox. And I'm going to do that. There's a bunch of different editing tools up here that you can use. Edit, obviously, which lets you grab a thing and drag it. But then you can also take a face and extrude it. Extruding is like the number, that warning that comes up. It always comes up the first time on a project. It means nothing. It's like you are in local coordinates when you're doing this. I don't know why they do that. So you can pull a face out and you see it's still got the old vertices. And now you've got more vertices to work with. You've doubled the amount of, not doubled, but you've close to doubled the amount of polygons that you have to work with. You can think of this as like origami kind of. And that's the way I pretty much always do. So what I want to do is I want to make this look like the R-Wing from Star Fox. And I can click all 4 of those by holding Control, and then weld them together. And it'll weld them to wherever the first one I selected was. And then I'm just gonna drag that up and then pull it out real far. That's gonna be the front of our spaceship. And then I'm gonna do the same in the back. And again, like Star Fox was a Super Nintendo game. It's really low poly. That's why we're doing that, because we can make that happen really quick. And select all 4 verts, weld them together, drag it out, and we've got a super basic implementation of a spaceship. I'm going to make that nose a little longer. Now, I'm going to go back to select mode so I have the whole thing selected. And I'm going to click away and then click back onto it. I can hit copy and paste if I want to duplicate it, or I can hit Control W, which will wait. There we go, which will duplicate it. And I'm going to scale it down numerically over here in the details panel to something like 0.6, 0.2. Yeah, no, that's not quite right. 0.2, 0.6. No, 0.2. I just want it to be long and thin. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. That's good enough. The Star Fox spaceship had like weird little things kind of hanging off of it, like this. So do that, get that close, and I'm going to hit Command W again to duplicate it one more time. I'm not going for super precision or anything. I'm just trying to make this work for the purposes of our little chat today. But I am going to look at it from the top down because I'm way too much of a perfectionist to actually not do this. Okay. You can sort of see the outline. I'm guessing it's probably compressed all to heck and back, and you can't really see exactly what I'm doing, but I'm just making all the bits. And I'm going to rotate these out a bunch. I think that's probably good. That's not quite. There we go. That's even enough. All right. Now, I think that looks okay. I'm going to make these ones bigger, though. I'm going to call them 0.75. These are the wings. And then we'll be done with this part. And actually, that's too big now, so no, I'm going to leave it the way it was. Okay. Now, what I can do is I can select all 5 of these brushes that I made, these BSP pieces, and I can go, where is it? Brush settings. There's a create static mesh button hidden under this little advanced disclosure box, which is lovely. Thank you for hiding the most useful part of the BSP editor, Unreal. But I will make this guy and I'll call it Spaceship Mesh. You see now in our content thing, we've got a spaceship mesh, and it stopped flickering. It's now one solid object. And I can change the material on it to something white. And so we got us a spaceship. Now, if you look in the outliner over here, you see it says Spaceship Mesh, that's the name of it, and it's a static mesh actor. What that means is it's an actor that just doesn't do anything. at all. It's decorative. So what we want to do is we want to create a player controllable pawn actor. So I'm going to go to the content thing and I'm going to right click and do create basic asset blueprint class. And there's a bunch of choices. Actors are things that exist in the world. Maybe they're just a tree that sits there and does nothing. Maybe they're a guy that walks around automatically. Could be anything. A pawn, though, is an actor that can be possessed, meaning that you, the player, can possess that pawn and control it. And then a character is a type of pawn that can be really controlled. Like it's got legs and arms, and you can walk it around. And there's dozens of tutorials on how to do that on the internet. But I'm going to just make a pawn work because we're doing this from scratch. We're going to call this one spaceship. Ooh, spaceship. Just spaceship. That's good enough. Now, if we double click this, we're given the blueprint editor, which is where we create actors and do all the programming, all the main little fine details of all of this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a component, and we want to add a static mesh component because the thing that we created was a static mesh. It's a non-animated model, basically. So we'll create one, and we'll call it spaceship mesh. And over here on the right, there's the details panel, just like in the main thing. And we'll pick our spaceship mesh. We could pick this big sphere, or we could pick, this large cube. But because we created a mesh already, it's right there. It's everything that we've got access to. And there's our guy, and it's currently using the default world grid material, but we can paint it any material we want. We could make it out of bricks, or we could make it out of apparently clay bricks, but we're just gonna make it white. So there's our little bad boy right there. And I'm just gonna save it, hit compile. Compile, we'll get into that in a minute. So I'm going to delete this one that is, again, just a basic static mesh actor, and I'm going to replace it with our actor. I'm going to sit it on the ground. Now, if I hit play, nothing interesting happens. I can look at it. I can walk around. I don't even I got flying controls apparently by default. So that's not interesting. Nobody wants that. So what we want to do is we want to set, the reason for that is we don't have a player set. We don't have any information. We haven't told Unreal, how do we want the gameplay to work in this? So we go to blueprints and we can set the game mode player type, but because we haven't created our own game mode, we can't yet. This is all the boilerplate stuff that you have to do to make anything. So real quick, we're going to make a new blueprint, and it's going to be a game mode. And we're going to call it spaceship game mode. And we're not going to do anything with it other than set the default pawn class to our spaceship. And that's over here in this details panel. Everything's almost always in the details panel if it's not programming stuff. If it's just setting some data, it's probably on the right side of the screen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go up to this blueprints button again, and we're going to set this levels game mode to the one that we just made, spaceship game mode. And now, if we hit play, we've got a spaceship, and we're sitting right on it, and we can't control it or do anything because we haven't programmed that yet. So let's do that. First things first, we go back into the spaceship blueprint and we want to do some programming. Where do we do the programming? Where does the code go? It's a little bit hidden at first, but eventually you get used to it. You see over here, there's this component panel, and we've already worked with that a little bit. But down here is the My Blueprint panel, and it's got all of the different things that have been programmed for the game so far, which is practically nothing right now. There's an event graph, and it has just these 3 places for programming to begin. There's an event called Event Begin Play that's there by default. It's not doing anything. There's another one called Event Actor Begin Overlap and Event Tick. This is for collision, and this is just what happens every single frame. This happens when the game starts. This is every single frame after that, and this is just when stuff hits you. And you see this little arrow here. That's the execution pathway. So what happens is the game code begins here, and every time it sees one of these, it goes on to the next thing. And so what we want to do is, actually what we want to do is nothing with any of these. What we want to do is make it do stuff when you press a button, right? Now, the easiest way to do that is if you right click on this big grid, there's all the different actions you can do. And there's so many actions. It's like impossible to know all of them. I don't know all of them, but you can search for them. And so if we wanted to search for the up arrow, you see it's got keyboard events. You can do up. So now when you press the up arrow on your keyboard, it'll go here. And so what we want to do is make the spaceship move forward, right? So what does that mean? What does making a spaceship move forward mean mathematically, right? So the only advanced math that you really need to know, and it's not even advanced, it's just basic geometry, I think. I think they teach this in geometry class. I don't know. I actually failed algebra. And then they put me in algebra again when I started high school, and I was so annoyed that I did the entire class in like 2 weeks, and then they put me into geometry, but I'd missed the first part. So maybe it's not taught in geometry class. I don't remember. Also, high school was 20 years ago. I'm an old man. But vectors are essentially groups of 3 numbers. In this case, it could be groups of any number of numbers, but X, Y, and Z. If you know anything about 3D at all, know this. There's X, which is like this direction. There's Y, which is this direction. And there's Z, which is this direction. The 3 axes that make 3D. And so what we want to do is we want to make the ship move forward along its own y-axis, its own forward direction. And so we want to start by taking its current location, which we can right click anywhere and just type get actor location. And you see this node here takes a target, which is what we're calling this method on this function. And it already is set to self. So that means we're going to get the actor location of the spaceship. That's what self is in the context of this. It's like whatever the thing you're editing is self. And it's going to return, you see it, if you put the mouse over it, it says return value vector. And so it's the X, Y, and Z of the spaceship in the world. And what we want to do, we can split this, and we want to make it move forward on the y-axis. So what we'll do is we will drag off of this. We'll just hit the plus thing, and it'll have a couple of choices from addition. We'll just do float plus float. And we'll set it to 10. Let's just call it 10 for now. And then we'll do, so now whatever this value was, it's now had 10 added to it. But it's not doing anything. We didn't set that. So we need to do set actor location now. And you see this one's blue because this is executable. This is like a writing thing. Green kind of means we're reading data. Blue means we're doing stuff. We're changing things. And I'm going to right click this here, and I'm going to split it again so that we can access each part individually. I'm going to connect them. You see how the Y is, we're doing something to it in the middle, but we're just taking whatever the existing X and Z values were. And the way it's organized is a little sloppy looking, and we'll clean it up in a bit. But let's see what happens when we run it. We can't tell what's happening because there's no camera. It's just sitting right in the middle of the spaceship. So let's go back to the spaceship and click on one of these things up here just so we've got our blueprint model view. And we're going to go add component. We're going to type in camera, and now we got a camera. It's currently inside the ship. If you hit F, by the way, it'll focus on whatever you have selected. It'll go like right up to it. And as you can see there, it gets right up on the camera. Oh, and this guy is apparently yeah, so we want to be aligned along X. X down here in this corner, you can see X is pointing this way. We want that to be forward. We're just going to kind of stick this here, and then we're going to pull the camera way back. I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom in and out. I figure that's probably obvious, but okay. Let's compile and save. Now let's take a look. There we go. And if I hit up, it's moving that way. We want to make that X, not Y. So we'll change this. We'll just drag that, and we'll stick this to that one. And then we'll take this and stick it over there. And that ought to do it. So now let's try. Nope. Yeah, it's going real slow, and there's two of them. The reason there's two of them is because when you start a game, it always spawns a player. So this one that we put in the scene, we actually don't need it. We'll just delete it. And now it has spawned one, and we can really slowly move forward. This game sucks. Let's make it better. So what we want to do, obviously this 10 isn't fast enough. So we can drag off of this, and we want to use a variable that we can set. And conveniently, it's got a little thing for promote to variable if you just drag off into nowhere. So we're going to do that. We're going to call it, you see over here, it's over here, we can just call it speed. And the default value over here, it says, please compile the blueprint. So we're going to do that. And now we can set it to 100, 10 times faster than what we had before. And yeah, now it moves, but it still sucks. It's going one step at a time, and it doesn't feel good at all. It doesn't feel like a space shooter, that's for sure. Now, the reason for that is because this is a key event. It's what happens when the key is pressed. It doesn't repeat. It's not a constant thing. It's like literally the act of, I have pressed the button. So what we want to do, and the correct way to do this, if we wanted to support a game controller or a keyboard or mouse or whatever, is we want to define an input event. Now this is a little bit weird and hidden, kind of. I think it's like a global setting that you have to do for your project, and I feel like it's a little bit weird and what's the word I'm looking for? Intuitive. That's what it is. But it is what it is. So you go to Edit, Project Settings, and there's a million of them. It's buried, but one of them in Engine is Input. Now in Input, there's action mappings and axis mappings, and then now there's also speech mappings. But actions are like, you press the fire button, right? You press the bomb button, you press the talk button. And axis mappings are like move along an axis. It's like turn or move forward. So we'll press plus and we'll create a new mapping called move forward. And we'll make it the W key, because that's what everybody does with a first person kind of game, PC games. It's just always that. And then we'll also do the backwards, and you can search for it, but there it is, yes. And set the scale to -1. So pressing W will make this move forward axis go forward, and pressing S will make it go -1 or backwards. And we will close this. And now all we have to do is right click here and type move forward, and you see our axis event exists. But there's also axis values, where it just kind of always has the most recent version of the number. So I'm going to do that, and you see it's green. It's a getter. It's a reading thing. And so what we're going to do is every single frame, the event tick gets called. So 60 times a second, this gets called. And we can do get move forward, which will be a value between -1 and 1. It's 1 if you're pressing up, and it's -1 if you're pressing down. So we can multiply that by speed. And if we want to use an existing variable, we can type it, and it'll be like get speed. Or if we want, we can find it over here and just drag it in there. And boom, there you go. And what we still want to do is get actor location and add them together. So add that to that. And I'm going to copy this up here and make a little room. This is getting really gross really quick, but we're going to clean it up in a second. And drag these together. And I'm going to delete this so it's less gross. And we're going to come back in a second and then make it real nice. But there we go. Now we're talking. Look at that. Spaceships moving through space. It's very exciting. Now, one of the weird things about a visual programming language like Blueprints is that you spend a lot of time just tidying up. There's a concept in programming called spaghetti code, where something that goes in a weird loop and kind of like just touches everything is like spaghetti. And Blueprints is literally like spaghetti. I mean, all of these things, there's so many noodles, and they're green. What the heck? So one of the things you can do is you can double click on it at any point, and it'll make a little relocator. So I like to kind of tie them up and line them up and make them nice. And there's nothing I can really do about this one crossing over, but it is what it is. I'm going to take this whole thing and just kind of stick it over here and get it a little closer together so all of it makes a little bit more sense. And yeah, we're still moving forward. Now, I kind of want to not have to look at all of this, so I can right click it and collapse it. And it makes a little node that has a bunch of values that, but if you look in it, it's the same stuff that we made before. They're just going here and they've all got different names, but we should name them properly. X, Y, and Z. Z. And you see they got updated there. So now we've kind of got it tucked away and it's a little bit cleaner, and we can name this calculate new position or something like that. So you see it still works and it doesn't look super, super gross. It looks a little gross in here. There's no inputs, but you can, oh, and if you double click outputs or inputs, it'll go back out. But it kind of looks nice. It's okay. It's not so bad. Now, obviously, we don't want to just move forward and backwards. We want to have left and right also. So we'll go back to project settings, which is under edit. And we'll find input again, engine input, right? There it is. And we'll create another axis mapping. We'll call this one straight, because when you move straight to the left or straight to the right in video games, that's called strafing. And those will be searching for things like A is hard because literally everything has an A in it. And then we'll do another one, D, and I'm just doing keyboard mappings, but you can do multiple things. You can, we wanted to make it the, oh, actually I learned this today while I was practicing a little bit. If you click this, you can then press the key on the keyboard and you don't have to find it. So I'm going to make it so that if you prefer the arrow keys, you can do that too. You see I'm just setting into the same values as their WASD equivalents. Now we'll go in here and actually I'm going to expand this thing back up again so we can take a look at what we put in there. We could also just go in there and edit it, but whatever. And so we want to add the, what did I call it? Strafe, the strafe value. Strafe, there we go. So we're gonna do that, we're gonna get it. And like moving forward, we're gonna multiply it by our speed variable. And we're gonna add that one to, when I did Y before, that ended up being left and right. So that's the one we want. We're gonna add it to that, do this. We're gonna delete this connection to new location Y. You see it's disconnected now. And there we go. So now when we play, we've got a really weird ship that can just zip around like crazy. Clearly speed is too fast. Let's make it 25. And there we go. It still moves unlike any spaceship I've ever seen. Maybe a helicopter could do that, but so what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add mouse looking. So we're going to go back to input again, and we're going to make another axis mapping called mouse tilt. And we're going to, you can see you can select mice stuff, and we're going to do the mouse Y axis. And then we're also going to do one called mouse turn. Now you could call them whatever you want to. Maybe you're a little bit more mathy than I am, and you think of them as yaw, pitch, and roll. Those are the technical terms for airplane rotation, and the engine uses them. I am not very mathy. Like I said, I literally failed algebra. So I just think of them as X, Y, and Z, and I call them whatever I want to. Um, so what we're going to do is, oops, 1 second. That's a different editor. I'm actually just really quickly checking what I did earlier today to make sure that I'm doing this nicely. All right, great, yeah. So we want to get that mouse tilt and that mouse turn value, turn. And we can drag off of this and we're going to do another thing. And there happens to be a function called add actor local rotation. And it's got the delta rotation. Delta in math means change. And so it's the change per frame. We will split this so that if we tried to connect these, we can't connect them because this is a rotation and this is a single floating point value. A floating point means it has a decimal. It's not an integer. It's not 1, 2, 3. It's 1.02 or something. It can be any number with a decimal or without a decimal. It can be anything. But we can split this just like we did over here and connect it to whichever part we want. Now, tilt is pitch. Pitch is this rotation around the y-axis. And then turn is the yaw. I don't know why that's called yaw. I kind of get pitch, and roll makes sense because you do a barrel roll, which is a Star Fox thing. But anyway, if we, now when we hit play, camera rotates when I move the mouse. But when we hit forward, it goes in the direction of the world's y-axis. It's wrong. That's bad. We don't want that. So now we're going to do the most mathy thing that we're going to do tonight, which is to multiply a couple of vectors. So give me a second to think about how I'm going to present this. What we're going to do is we're going to take all of this here. We're just going to move it out of the way. We're going to come back to it. We're going to break links by right-clicking and just doing break. And what we want is we do want get actor location. That's what we're going to start with. So I copied it and pasted it. I'm going to recombine these back into a vector. And we're going to calculate what's called a forward impulse. It's the direction that we want to move in. Luckily, most of this is done for us with Unreal. We don't have to think too hard. There's what's called get actor forward vector. And what that is that's the vector that is like coming straight out of the front of the spaceship. If you imagine the spaceship with like a line coming that goes from the back of it through the nose and onward to infinity, that's the forward vector. And of course, there's an up vector and a left or right vector. I think it's called a right vector. So what we want is we want to move in that direction rather than just incrementing y. So what we'll do is we will get, what did we call it? We called it get move forward. That is the input. So we want that. And we want to, again, multiply that by the speed variable that we set. So we've got that. So instead of being between -1 and 1, it's between negative speed and positive speed. And then we want to multiply this forward vector by that. And when you do multiply, there's multiply by float, multiply by integer, and multiply by vector. We want to do we want to do float because we're going to multiply it by this green guy. And they're color coded, so it's easy to not screw up. And then we want to add that to the player location, which is the two vectors being added together. And then we want to, these are all split, so we're going to recombine them so we can just connect this. And that ought to do it. And now the spaceship will move forward in whatever direction you point it in. We didn't do it for left and right yet, so that's all screwy. So we're going to do that real quick, and then we're done with the spaceship movement. And then we're going to clean this up, and we're going to delete all this crap because it's old. We don't want that. So just like there's a player or a get actor forward vector, there's a get actor right vector. And we're going to do multiply that just like we did by move forward with the strafe value that we made. And we're going to multiply that by speed. And we're gonna we're gonna add that to we're gonna multiply by float, boom, and we can click this addition here and just add another pin to it, and bam, that ought to do that. Yeah, there we go. We got a really maneuverable spaceship. Woo! I'm having so much fun. Oh, I'm gonna fly into the sun. Okay. Now I'm gonna tidy this up just a little bit. I'm gonna select these, collapse it, and call it calculate forward impulse. And it's returning two values, and I'm not sure what they are, so I'm gonna go in and I'm going to say, oh, wait, what did I do wrong here? I should have done the addition first. Let me, I know, better way to do this. Break this, delete this extra pin, and we'll just do another addition so that we make it look nice. Oh, wait, no, okay. Sorry, my bad. This is what we want to call forward impulse. Calculate that. I probably just lost everybody. They're all like, what's going on? Just tidying this jazz up because it looks so gross.
Do we want to pause for a second for questions?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, I haven't seen anything come through the chat, but if anyone has any questions, you can either unmute now and ask, or you can type them in the chat.
I had a question.
Oh, sure, Rebecca, go ahead.
Rebecca?
Yeah, how did you change the speed from 10 to 25 earlier?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you see over here in our My Blueprint panel, we've got a section for the graphs, which this is the graph. There's a section for functions. There's a section for macros. We're not going to do functions or macros today. And there's a section for variables. So we got speed down here. And the default value for it is set over here in the details panel. And so I set 25 there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Are you running Unreal while we do this?
No, I'm just watching because my son used to play Fortnite. and I'm A+ and network certified. So I'm thinking about learning more about game design.
Mhm.
So I'm just here to learn.
Oh, cool, cool. That's great. Um,
Thank
so yeah, we're not doing a ton with these variables. We're really just using them as a place to store a number. So it's not just putting numbers in places. We've got a named variable, but obviously you can use this to do all kinds of stuff. Unfortunately, we don't have like a million hours to do like the nitty gritty, but we've got the basics. So, did anyone else have any questions right now?
I just have a clarifying question or maybe a comment that you can verify. Loving it so far. Thank you, by the way. So the camera inside of the spaceship actor or the pawn basically freezes the camera in place. And so when you're tilting, like using the mouse to like tilt, it's just tilting the entire object, and the camera's just frozen on the spacecraft, right? So everything's like tilting.
Right. Yeah.
So the camera in there is very purposeful. So you wouldn't put the camera outside of the spacecraft necessarily.
Right. So yeah, like if you wanted to have a more complicated camera system, you could have a separate camera actor that is not affected by the player. Like obviously, the only game I can think of right now is like Resident Evil 2 on the PlayStation. Like when you go into a room and there's a camera anchored in the corner of a room and you move around and the camera doesn't. That you would want a separate camera for it. And in this case, what we're actually moving when we do this tick, set actor location, the root object, which is this default scene root, that's what's being moved. And then everything else that's a child of it is being moved along with it. They're actually not being moved. It's like they just are always fixed relative to where they were.
Because it's one object, and all this code, all this self targets both objects inside of one global object.
Right, exactly.
Something like that. Okay. Thank you very much. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, all these components are part of this actor. So where were we then? Any other questions? All right, well, I think we'll move forward then. We got this guy doing this stuff. So that's where we're at. Next up, I wanna shoot bullets. And luckily, this is pretty easy. There's not a lot to bullets that we haven't already done. So we're gonna create a new blueprint. This one's not gonna be a pawn because we can't control it directly. It's just gonna be an actor. And we're just gonna call it bullet. And incidentally, this sphere that it shows, the default root sphere, like this, you would not see this in game. It's just kind of a placeholder. But we do want it to be a sphere. So we're going to add a static mesh component. And we're just going to call it bullet mesh. And then we're going to go over to the static mesh setting. And I should take a second to clarify the difference between a static mesh and a static mesh component, and even a static mesh actor. A static mesh is 3D model data. It's a bunch of numbers that comprise what a character looks like, what a mesh looks like. A static mesh component is an instance of that. So there's only one copy of that data in the computer's memory, but every static mesh component points to it. And so it can get drawn like 50 times on the screen. And we don't have to waste a ton of RAM by having all of the vertices duplicated. It's a little programmery, but the gist of it is one is an instance and one is like the data. So we're just going to use a sphere, and I'm sure there's a sphere in here. We're going to just type sphere. Yeah, shape sphere. All right, there we go. That's our bullet. Is that going to be sitting on the, no, it doesn't matter. We don't have to be super accurate. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it so when the spaceship, when you press the space bar, it creates a bullet. So we can just type space bar here and get a keyboard event. I probably should do this through the event input system. And you know what? I'm going to do the same thing that we did before. I'm going to go to input. This time though, it's an action mapping, not an axis mapping, because it's an action. We're going to call this shoot. We're going to call it shoot, and we're going to bind it to the space bar. All right. Now shoot action, and what do we need to do? We need to spawn an actor, right? Yeah. So it's easy. Spawn actor from class. Now, class, incidentally, is the name of the blueprint, basically. So our spaceship is class spaceship. Our bullet is class bullet. And we'll have a list of all the various actor classes. And you can see there's bullet. We could also type bullet. And we need to connect this to pressed. So when you press the shoot button, execution will go over here to spawn bullet, and it'll spawn it. Now, if we tried to run right now, it'll give us an error. And that error is that the current value of the spawn transform pan is invalid. We haven't told it where to put the bullet in the world. Transform, incidentally, is a location, a rotation, and a scale. They're all piled up together. The reasons for which are very mathy. If you are interested, look up affine transformation matrices. I'll type the name of it in the channel. But the good news is you don't have to know how that works. All you gotta know is that a transform is a location, a rotation, and a scale. And they call location translation due to math. I don't know why. But just like we can do get actor location, we can do get actor transform. Now, if we split this, you can see it splits into location, rotation, and scale. And if we were to split these, they split into X, Y, Z. So, and they all split into X, Y, Z. So basically a transform is all 9 of those different X, Y, Z values. All 3 of those different X, Y, Z values, all 9 of those individual floating point numbers. So anyway, gonna combine those back together because we don't need them all separate. Oops. There we go. And we're just gonna spawn this bullet right where the spaceship is. And we'll play, and oh, it's a little bit off to the right because I probably did something weird. Yeah. Okay, so it's really hard to see. There's a little red line, and I'm guessing the compression is probably too high for you to see it, but it's right here. It's off to the right, but you can't see this scene dot thing. So for whatever reason, I don't know what we did, but our stuff is just kind of off to the side. We're going to drag it back. And actually, probably the easier way to do it would be to click this and just make sure that X is 0 and do that for both things. Where's the camera? Yeah. Oh, Y. We want Y to be 0, actually. Is that right? Oh, yeah, the spaceship. The anchor point on the spaceship is off to the side. So, it's because we created BSP mesh stuff at the beginning, and I didn't do a very good job. I was sloppy. So I'm gonna try again. Let's see if we've corrected for, yeah, it looks like it. And we're just leaving a trail of bullets. Those are the worst bullets ever. Let's make them better bullets. What we're going to do is a bullet. What does a bullet do? It moves forward. So all we got to do is we got to get actor location. And we want to get the actor forward vector because we want to move along the local coordinates of wherever the bullet's facing. Oh wait, not forward vector. Get actor forward vector. There's two things. I think Amazon's here. I got some sort of present. Let's find out what it is together. My wife's doing it. I'm so excited. I just can't. I can't even concentrate anymore.
It's mine.
It's a present for you. Oh, it's nothing. What a letdown. All right. So anyway, I wanted to clarify. There's also get forward vector, which you can take a rotation, and it's less useful. Get actor forward vector is what you want, and so when you're playing along at home and you type in get forward vector and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't working. That's why you want actor forward. So again, what we do is we want to multiply this by the speed, which now that I think about, we don't have a speed variable for this bullet yet, so we're going to create one, and we're going to call it speed. Let's call it bullet speed just so that we don't get confused. Bullet speed. Normally, I would just call it speed. I would make it work the same in all of my actors. But for clarity, for this demonstration, I'm going to call it bullet speed. I'm going to compile it and set the default value to, let's make it real fast. Let's make it 200. And then we're going to add that to this vector to vector. And then we're going to, of course, not forget to actually set it. Set actor location. And remember, when you add things, you're doing some math, but you have to write it to some location. You have to do something with that number. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So now let's see what happens when we hit space. Yeah. Now those bullets you can see over here in the outliner, which I can't point to with the mouse because I'm actually in game, but you can see it spawned a bunch of bullets and they're not disappearing. And that's fine. I have a really, really powerful computer, but you know, maybe we're going to put this game on the cell phone or something. We want to make sure that we clean up after ourselves. So let's go back to bullet. And the easiest way to do that on begin play, that's called when the bullet is spawned. Just do a delay of, let's say, 1 second. And then after that delay is completed, let's just destroy the actor. So now you see it gets off into the distance and it despawns. And you see over here in the thing, bullet 4, deleted actor. Bullet 5, deleted actor. Bullet 6, etc. We got bullets. What do you think? Should we kill something with them? I think we should probably kill something with them. So let's create a bad guy. And it's going to be, this one will be a pawn. We're not going to use it like a pawn. We're not going to possess it like as a player, but when you make an enemy, it might be controlled by an enemy AI controller, and we're not doing any of that stuff yet, but and we're not going to do that tonight. But we will, just because that's the way that you'd want to do it, we're going to make this guy a pawn. We're just going to call it enemy. Now, I don't feel like doing another set of BSPs, so I'm going to just create it out of a bunch of existing static meshes. So I'm going to create a static mesh component here, and I'm going to find this pipe. got a pipe there. Yep, that's a good looking pipe. And I'm gonna shrink it down a little bit, make it look like some wings, kind of. I'm gonna do another static mesh, and doesn't need to be parented to it. And let's do a cone. There's got to be a cone, right? Cone. Yeah. And I'm gonna rotate that 90 degrees, and I'm gonna shrink it down a bit. Make it a little, yeah, there we go. Kind of jam it in there. Make sure it's lined up right. That's mostly even. This guy's too. Oh, I see. It's anchored down below. All right, we got that. You know what? I want some tailpipes. So I'm going to copy this, paste it, and give it a rotation. Make it a little smaller. Nope, other way. There we go. And no, that's too small. I want that bigger. Yeah, that's all right. That'll do. Don't hate that. You know, sometimes you just gotta, what do they call it? Kit bash, where you take a bunch of crap and you stick it together. And that's all you gotta do. So we got this guy. What do we want him to do? We want him to move forward towards you all the time, like you're pressing forward, but just always. So we can do that on event tick. We'll go over to spaceship. We'll look at our event graph here. We'll get this calculate forward impulse stuff. Yeah, just copy that and paste it in here. We'll delete this extra pin, and you see it added _2 to the little collapse thing. It always, when you paste something, it always adds _2. But what we're going to do is we're going to expand that anyway and make sure that this code looks right. You see speed, we copied the speed variable, but it doesn't have that green tint to it that it has in this one. You can see it's kind of green. That's because it's not connected to anything. If we compile it and it's connected to execution, it'll give us an error because we didn't create a speed variable. We could go do that. We could add a variable and call it speed, or we could just right click this and create one. And it's smart enough to just kind of do that for us. But it's not smart enough to set that speed to anything. So what did we make the spaceship? I think our guy is 25. No, is it 100? Well, I'm going to set this to 25 for now. We'll see. So, okay, we're going to take actor location. We're going to add, we don't want to use move forward because we want to always move forward, and that is our player input. So let's just connect speed directly. It'll always move 100% forward. So let's see what happens when we run this. Is it going to work right on the first try? Oh, we should also probably put an enemy in the world. And sometimes positioning things is weird, so I'm just going to do this with numbers. Get it right in the middle of the world, and then drag it forward. Yeah, okay, it's facing the, you want it to probably come towards you. And, oh, yeah, we need to make sure that this actor is, yeah, it's backwards. You can see the X axis is going to the right and the spaceship is pointed to the left. So we need to, because we kit bashed this, all these pieces need to be rotated individually, which is gross. I could have probably done this better, but you know, strapped for time. Such is the way of things. I want that a little further out. Is it like that? Yeah, that's good. Again, good enough. As my wife's old band used to say, good enough for ska. They were a ska. All right. That guy is now facing the correct direction and turned around, and he's coming right for us. And he really was moving. And tiny. Okay, let's do this better. We're going to just add a scene component. And we're going to parent all of these to it. So they're all children of it. And then we're just going to scale this guy up by like 10. There we go. I could have done that earlier and saved us the trouble of rotating every part individually. There we go. We got us a guy coming right at us. He's way too close. Let's move him way further back. And he's coming right for us. Oh, get out of the way. Great. I want to kill him. I don't like that guy. He seems like a jerk. So let's make him die. So the in the event graph for our enemy, there was one of these default nodes was actor begin overlap. And what that means is when it overlaps with another actor for the first time, this gets called. And that's really convenient for bullets. And so what we want to do is the bullet will be this other actor. The problem is that it could be any actor. It could be the player, it could be the world, it could be who knows what. So what we want to do is, it's called casting, where casting means to take something of a general class and determine if it's a more specific class. So like if animals were a class and we wanted just a dog, we would cast an animal to a dog. And what we would get, we would either get the dog as a dog, or we would get nothing. That's a little confusing. And it's very programmery. So if anybody's got any questions about that, now's a great time to ask. And I can try to explain it, or we can just trust that you want to cast an actor to the type that you need.
Programming language isn't just inheritance. You're just like extending this enemy class from a different type of class. Is that what's
Correct.
happening?
Yeah. So
okay.
we've got actor, then there's pawn, and then we've got spaceship, bullet, and enemy. So we're casting actor down to bullet. And it's really easy to do. You can just type bullet and it'll cast to bullet. And what we'll get is either success or cast failed. And when it's a success, all we want to do is let's just destroy the actor. So let's see if this works. Oh, it's not working, and I know why, because we don't have collision enabled for something. So what we want to do is make sure that we've got that. In fact, what we need to do is create a collision box. We need a collision box. You have probably all heard the term collision box before from video games. So we're going to make a box. We're going to stick all these things in the box, and let's look at it. Okay, the box is really small right now. And which way is the box facing? Let me do this while I'm looking at it instead of not looking at it. Okay. Box. For some reason, box had a bunch of weird settings. I'm going to just reset them. Okay. Now I'm going to take all of these and stick them in the box. They're now in the box. This other scene thing that I created earlier to do the scaling to make my life a little easier, I'm going to delete it. We don't need it. So now the actor, the box is like the root. And you can see it's a really tiny box. There's a box extent over here that we can set. We could also set the scale. We could scale it up, but because the spaceship is inside the box, the spaceship would get bigger too. So we don't want to do this. Oh, that looks real weird. What we want to do is just make it bigger, like 400, 400, 200. Yeah, that's close enough. And drag these down a little bit, get them kind of centered in there. And again, doing this real sloppy. This is placeholder art. This is programmer art, they call it. And there we go. And this box, we want to make sure that it generates overlap events. There's this collision panel, and generate overlap events got to be checked. Otherwise, you won't get events. That's just an optimization that they do, and it's off by default for a lot of types. We also want to make sure that the bullet does the same thing. And it does. And the mesh for the bullet is simple enough that it should work. So let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. Killed him. But it didn't look cool. That's not good. We want it to look cool. Otherwise, what's the point of video games even? So begin overlap, cast a bullet, destroy actor. What do we want to do besides that? Particles. I'm not going to get into creating a particle effect because that's just so much. There's a whole art to it. And honestly, asset creation in video games is like 90% of the work these days. Luckily, you can buy assets and stick stuff together, and there's no shame in that. Like, I can't. If I tried to release a video game with some asset store assets, I would get destroyed. IGN would be like, "You're the worst," and I'd be like, "I am. It's true." But beginners absolutely can and should. And luckily, because we created this with starter content, we've got a few anyway. So particles come from emitters, and we need to spawn an emitter at location. And that's such a huge box. We want to spawn it where the actor is. So let's just do get actor location, and that'll get the location of our enemy spaceship. Hook that up to the location, and we want to set what it's emitting to this explosion that just comes with the starter content in Unreal. And then we still want to destroy the actor because it exploded. So, oh, that was a letdown. That was tiny. Let's just scale it up. 10 times bigger. That sounds good. Yeah, okay. Now we're doing all right. And then I'm gonna tidy this up a little bit because this is just gross looking. I'm gonna call this explode. And I was a fine arts major, not a programming major, so all of this lines connected stuff, it really activates my OCD, my love of beauty. And so I have to clean it up. So my humble apologies for wasting your time with tidying up graphs. But there we go, it's better. Okay. Now, where are we? We've got this guy who just sort of rudely comes at you, and we back up to shoot him. But what we really want to do is have like wave after wave of dude come at you, right? So let's get into the level blueprint. Actually, before we do that, let's make something in this world besides this stupid checkerboard floor. So let's real quick just delete it, get rid of that, and let's create a landscape. And actually, you do that with a different mode. This modes button up here, like we did with brush editing, there's a landscape mode. So we're going to switch to that, and you see changed a bunch of stuff. We've got this big grid there, and we've got all this information. Landscapes are super powerful and complicated and all kinds of things. But the gist of it is it's a big grid that you can edit. And it's real big. So what we want is like, let's make it long and thin. And I think which direction is which? Okay, no, that's, we want it. Let's do this. And then we'll drag it forward. You can sort it. This is where the spaceship is, I think. I'm just gonna drag this to be like, yeah, that. So it's a big play field moving forward. And you gotta hit create, otherwise you won't create it. All right, now we've got all these tools here for changing the landscape. And the most basic one is sculpt, which will raise things, or if you hold down shift, it'll lower them. You see how it's kind of, yeah. And you can change the tool strength. I'm gonna make it stronger, and I'm gonna make it bigger. And I'm just gonna kind of hold down shift and like make a path through it. I'm not doing super like amazing work or anything. I'm just trying to, you know, make it interesting, make it visually something beyond just like a dumb grid. All right, and then if we play, see we've got this, boy, that is really noisy looking. So let's give it a material too. I'm gonna switch back to regular mode. I'm gonna click the landscape, and I'm gonna go down to the details. There's landscape material, it's currently set to none. I happen to know that one of the basic materials is grass. There we go. So there we go. We got this real crappy looking landscape. And boy, my ship is slow. Let's make me a lot faster. Let's change speed to 100. Okay, this is more fun. Yeah, we're flying. We're flying through this world. We can shoot. Oh no, we can fly right through it. Whoa, that's, yeah. That's what it looks like on the other side of the polygons in a video game. So let's make it so when you hit the ground, you die. And that's gonna also be, one second, let me, that's actually, it's not going to be overlap. We want to do event hit, which isn't one of the default ones. We're going to get these out of the way, but you can just right click and go add event, and somewhere in here, collision hit. And we're going to want to do just like we did with enemy when it gets hit. Let's spawn an emitter. We're not going to destroy the player because that's a little bit rude. That'll make our game a little bit confused. So let's just spawn an explosion, and then we will we'll take our spaceship mesh and we'll hide it. You see, new visibility is not checked, so that will make him disappear. And then let's also disable the tick so you can't move. There's set actor tick enabled, which will be set to false. Oh, and do we need to make, yeah, this should be good. This should be good. All right. Now, oh yeah, one more thing that we've got to do. Like the enemy that has a box collision, we need a collision as well. Because our guy is one mesh, we can actually just create a collision for that mesh rather than the actor. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We want to take our spaceship mesh, not the spaceship blueprint, but the mesh, which you can find in here, or if you were looking at the spaceship and you were looking at the spaceship mesh and you could see it's set to this static mesh, you can just double click this and it'll take you right there. Now there's a bunch of things here to see about your meshes, but one of them is collision. And if you turn on simple collision, you see we don't have any of that. But that's super easy to do. You just go up to the collision menu and you can add any sort of default collision you want. Sphere, it creates a sphere big enough to hold the ship. But we can do better than that. Let's do this 26 DOP simplified collision. I can't remember what DOP stands for, but it just makes a little mesh that roughly fits. And you see, it's like, that's fine, it's close enough. And now that ought to do it. No, it still didn't do it. Let's make sure, what am I forgetting? Block all. That, do I need overlap? I don't think I do, but let's make sure. And then spaceship doesn't generate hit events. Collision simulation generates hit events. That needs to be on. That's got to be it. And let's make sure the collision presets are set to. Well, before we do that, let's just see if it works without. Okay, it doesn't. I'm an expert. Oh, come on. What am I forgetting? You know what? I'm just going to do it the same way I did with this guy. I'm going to stick a box collision in there. I'm going to stick him inside of it. And that's going to be good enough. And I'm going to disable collision for him now because one, it wasn't working, and two, we want this to be the thing that does the colliding. Generates hit events. Okay, so I've moved all of that collision stuff up from spaceship mesh and into box, and by God, it's either going to work or I'm going to switch to the version of the project that I made earlier. Come on. What's not triggering? Real quick, I'm going to add a breakpoint here. Let's do some debugging. Right click something and do break and play. Okay, it's not getting triggered at all. So I'm pretty sure the spaceship's set up right. How's the landscape doing? Collision. It's good to, you know, have to figure this stuff out sometimes. Lock all. And then this guy. I made a version of this earlier today just to test things out and make sure that this never happened. But it did. And so I'm going to compare it. Oh, maybe it's this. It's possible we're just going right through it because the ship's moving so fast. And what we need to do is use continuous collision detection, which is turned off by default. It's this, use CCD. You can just type in details CCD, and that will probably be it. And if not, then I really am going to give up and we're going to do something, move on to the next thing. God damn it. I swear I do this for a living. I've been doing it for 20 years. Okay, well, we're already at 90 minutes, so let's just switch it over to this one. Oh, hey, we're done now. I'm going to show you what we did, what I also did. Nope. Okay. So I don't know why I couldn't get the collision to work. I'm sure I'm going to see it later and I'm going to be like, oh, God damn it. But we're going to just kind of skip ahead. This is our completed spaceship. I tidied up some of this stuff. You've seen all of this before. This is the rotation and movement stuff. We've got our shooting. That's all normal. And then for event hit, we spawn that explosion. We disable collision after that. I wonder if that's what it was. We make it invisible. We disable the tick, and then after 3 seconds, we do a delay, and then we just reopen the level. So this get current level name gets the name of the level, which is level 1, and then it just opens it again. So what that does is this: 1, 2, 3. Start over. And then the other thing that I would have done after that would be to create an end of the level. So I created an actor called end of level, and all it has is a big collision box. Hold on, that happens sometimes. If you ever see unrecognized tab, just close all your tabs and open them. Unreal's so buggy sometimes. Hey, it's a demo. Anyway, this end of level has all it does is when it overlaps with the spaceship, it opens level 1 again. If we were going to continue forward, we'd maybe like open up, we'd throw up a HUD. We'd say like, hey, congratulations, you win, that sort of thing. But effectively, all we do is this. I'm going to just fly straight forward and finish the level by flying into the end zone. Super simple. And finally, the other thing that I had done was I did some level blueprinting. The level itself has its own blueprints for making things happen. So what I had done is, you see over here in the outliner, I created enemy spawn location. And it's just this little locator target node. It's called a target node. You can create one in the palette by typing target point, just drag it into the world, and it's just a point that you can do stuff with. Now, if you have it selected and you go to blueprints, open level blueprint, that'll open the blueprint for the level. Unlike every other blueprint where you can just double click it here, you can't double click the level and get the level blueprint, because of course not. Why would you be able to do that? That just opens the level. Maybe you can right click and do it. Is there? No such luck. So you go to open level blueprint. And what I did was on begin play, I created a timer. It fires every 4 seconds and it loops. And it does an event, which is essentially, if you're a programmer, it's a callback. So you can just drag off of this backwards and do like add custom event, which I already did, so we'll just connect it back. But this custom event will get fired every 4 seconds. And what we do is we, for the level blueprint, which is kind of special, you can select something in here in the world outliner, and if it's in the level that you're editing, you can just right click and do create a reference to it. It's like, I don't know, it's not super intuitive, but it's how you can get a reference to an actor in your world, in the level that you're in. So, and that'll create that. So what we do is that enemy spawn location, I just get its transform and I spawn an enemy every 4 seconds. And then what ended up happening was they were just coming from way off in the distance. So I changed it so that every frame, that enemy spawn location moves to be 10,000 units in front of the player. So they're always going to be just this far off in the distance. Can you guys see me, or is it just my screen? Okay, so my hand gestures are, okay, good. So you see, this is essentially just moving it forward. There's a handy thing called get player pawn that you can do just about anywhere, and that will always return the player. And then you get actor location, you can mess with stuff and set it, and bam. So that moves the guys spawning back to be in front of you. And so there'll be one there. Yep, bam. And then another one, bam, bam. Yeah, I got him. And then, yeah, probably one more before we get to the end. Ooh, almost hit him, didn't quite hit him. Oh, the only other thing I changed since things got confusing was I made it so that the player, where's the player? There's this like zoom thing. It's like right in the way. I can't see where my guy, spaceship. Are we looking at the spaceship? We're looking at the spaceship. Event tick. Handle movement. Yeah. I added a value to player forward. I added 1 to it so that pressing back just stops you, and pressing forward makes you go twice as fast. That way your spaceship's always moving forward like spaceships have a tendency to do. And that is pretty much it. We made a simple Star Fox type game. We learned about what actors are. We learned about blueprinting. We learned about game modes, meshes, collision. We didn't quite figure out how to get landscape collision to work, but it's not as hard as it was being made to look. I was screwing something up, yeah, there's a million tutorials on the internet on how to do it right. So, does anyone have any questions? Does anybody want to try to do one more thing? Where are we at? How's everybody doing? Well, all right. Let's see. Hey, oh, could you create a method to generate multiple opponents? Sure. Yeah, let's do that. Boop-a-doo. All right, so let's go back to the level blueprint. And what we've got is we've got our timer, and every 4 seconds it creates an enemy. But let's make it do 3 of them. And let's make them fly straight at you, because what's happening right now is they're being spawned kind of in a straight line. So like they're going over there. The dot that we made, the target point, we're only adjusting the Y or the X location down this corridor. But so all you have to do to avoid them is not be in the path, and they'll never come at you. So let's change that. Let's make them do that. So first off, let's do, let's take this and we'll get the right vector. And let's do a for loop. Ah, there we go. That's some stuff. You guys want some for loops? Everyone loves for loops. For loop. Not for each, just regular for. Let's start at -1, and we'll go to 1, and it's inclusive for all you programmers out there. And we'll multiply. All right, I'm just going to tidy this up for a second. We're going to get rid of that. What we want to do is we want to get a location, let's say 500 units to the left and 500 units to the right, and then one right in the middle. And we'll get like a nice wave of guys coming at you. And so we will get the right vector, get actor right vector, and we'll take this index, which will be -1, 0, 1 in that order, and then stop. We'll multiply that by, what did I say, 500 units apart? Let's see how that looks. And then we'll multiply that by the right vector. No, right, needs to be the other way around. Vector times float. And if vector times float, always the float's on the bottom, so these wires are crossed. I guess I can do that. It's hard to make things look nice sometimes. And then we want to take the transform of this, get actor transform, and we will add multiply compose transform. We need to split this. Vector plus vector, and then we'll split this and do that. And let's see if that works. Let's take a look. Yeah, there we go. Wow, 500 units was not enough. Let's make it. Man, Zoom is so annoying. That little bar on the top of the screen is right in the way. We'll call it 2000. We could make this a variable. Spacing, enemy spacing, I don't know. Okay, now they're still not coming at you, so let's do that now. Let's see, what's the right way to do that? Connect to transform. Okay, what we want to do, let's make a transform. Make transform. And to make a transform, you combine these things. Bam. Then we'll break all of these and recombine them and hook that up. Now from this, we can do let's see, look at, when do I make that from? 1 second. Find look at rotation. Okay, great. Okay, so incidentally, when you drag off of something and you start typing, it filters by what actually works with whatever you're dragging off of. If you just right click anywhere, it'll give you everything. You can also turn off context sensitive and it'll give you access to everything, even if it won't work. So if you can't find something, that's usually why. It's usually being like blacklisted because it's not the right type of data for the thing you're doing. So we actually don't need to do this make transform, but that's fine. So look at rotation. So we want to start from where the enemy is going to be spawned, and we want to go towards where the player is. So we can do that get player pawn. And I apologize, this is getting messy. Get actor location. So the location of the player, we connect it to that, and that's going to be our rotator. So that, let's see if that works, and then we'll clean it up and I'll explain better. Didn't do it too well. I think it did something, but it's hard to tell because my guys are they're kind of coming at me. Yeah, you see they're crossing over each other, so they must be on different paths. Yeah, they're coming at me, just not very well. Level, yeah. Okay, so without having a ton of time left to really describe, to really figure out the fine details here, does UE4 have a built-in physics system? By the way, someone named Gage just asked. Yes, it absolutely does. We're doing real simple Game Boy-ish kind of math, like addition and subtraction, because I wasn't sure if this was going to be adults or children. So I wanted to make sure that we did something nice and comparatively simple, but it absolutely does have physics. And let me think, how can I show you that simply? I'm like, can I just show you a game I'm working on? And then I'm remembering that this is being recorded. And no, I'm not going to show you one of the games in development that I'm doing for PlayStation 5 because I would get just sued. But I'm going to, I showed how to do multiple guys at once. We did some simple stuff here. So let's switch it up for a second. And we'll just do some physics with the last few minutes that we've got. Let's just grab a sphere. We'll stick it in the world. We'll make it bigger so we can see it from a distance. And all we got to do is physics, simulate physics. And you see, it's like rolling along the landscape. And can I affect it? Can't with my bullets because they're set to overlap. But were we to do a bunch of these, am I getting a PS5? Not right away. I'm not getting a PS5 because they're hard to pre-order. I am getting a PS5 dev kit, and developer kits are great because obviously that's what you make video games on, but I can't play retail games on it. So it's not exactly the same thing. Plus it doesn't look anything like the retail PlayStation. It looks like it's, I think there were leaked images of it on the internet. It's this weird looking thing. But yeah, I'm working on, I should be getting a PlayStation 5 dev kit pretty soon. Does anybody else have any other questions? I'm down to stick around for a while. But I also realize that I've been talking for 2 hours and I want to make sure that people aren't bored and want me to stop.
Since we have such a small group, I would say go ahead and you can unmute and ask your questions.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I do got to jump. But I just want to say thank you very much. This was excellent, and just to see someone with your experience kind of work through and problem solve using Unreal, it's been a treat. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad. And I'm here in town. I've set up a game studio. I moved here in January, like right before coronavirus hit. I had no idea. I was just going to wait out a visa for a job in Japan, and then I decided in like February to stay in Missoula, where I'm from. I'm born in Montana, and I just lived in California for a while making video games. And I was working in Tokyo for a bit, and now I'm here. But when the pandemic is over and it's safe to meet human beings in meet space, I'd love to meet up with people if you're into this sort of stuff. There's a Missoula Tech Slack that I'm in. I don't know if that's a thing people know about or what, but and of course, I'm sure the library you can get in touch with the library and get in touch with me, or you can just shoot me. I'm Adam Rippon, so I'm on Facebook, and just send me a friend request and like a message or something and say, hey, I was in the thing, I want to talk about video games. I want to see your PlayStation 5 dev kit. Whatever you want to do. Obviously, I'm under NDA and I'm not allowed to show PlayStation 5 dev kits. So don't ask me. Definitely, whatever you do, don't ask me. Definitely. Thanks for coming, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I hope that it was useful. And if you make anything in Unreal, please do try to get in touch, and I would love to see what you make. It's like my grand video games almost.
Well, thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers, everybody.